February 3rd, 1950, London, England. A thin man in a grey suit walks into an MI5 interview room carrying nothing but a briefcase and a calm smile. Klaus Fuchs, 38 years old, nuclear physicist, Harwell Laboratory. Across the table, two intelligence officers place a single folder between them. Intercepted messages, coded names, and hints of a traitor buried deep inside the West's atomic program. Fuchs adjusts his glasses. He doesn't ask for a lawyer. He doesn't ask why he's here. He already knows. For 7 years, he's been stealing the most dangerous secrets on Earth. Not with dead drops or microfilm, but with memory, equations, and access no one ever questioned. Inside his mind is the blueprint of America's atomic bomb. And inside that briefcase is every calculation for the plutonium core, every timing sequence for the implosion lens, and knowledge worth billions in research, and priceless to Moscow. To MI5, this is a routine interview, but to the United States, it will become the greatest betrayal in nuclear history, because what they don't know is that Klaus Fuchs has already armed the Soviet Union with the key to the atomic age. But how did a quiet refugee become the most destructive spy of the century? And why did he decide the world deserved a second superpower? January 30th, 1933. Leipzig, Germany. Klaus Fuchs walks home from university carrying a stack of lecture notes when he sees something new on the streets. Brown shirts, torches, chanting. The National Socialists have just taken power. Within weeks, political dissidents start disappearing. Fuchs's family, a household of outspoken anti-fascists, is suddenly marked. His father is beaten twice. His sister's name appears on a local blacklist. Fuchs is 21, brilliant, quiet, a mathematics prodigy. But none of that matters now. By summer, Germany is no longer safe for people like him. He packs 2 shirts, a slide rule, and a single letter of recommendation from his professor. No money, no plan, just an understanding that staying means prison. Or worse. He boards a night train heading west. Destination, anywhere that isn't ruled by Hitler. In 1934, he arrives in Britain as a political refugee. His German accent attracts suspicion at ports and train stations, but universities see something else: raw talent. Within months, he's studying under Max Born, one of the greatest physicists of the century. Born tells colleagues, this young man thinks in equations. Nobody asks why he fled Germany or checks his political sympathies, because, well, they're just too busy recruiting brilliant minds. By 1939, Europe is on fire again. Britain begins quietly assembling teams of scientists to study atomic fission. They need theorists who understand fast neutrons, chain reactions, and the mathematics behind energy release. Fuchs is recommended, not because he's trusted, but because he's irreplaceable. He signs the Official Secrets Act without hesitation. The same day, MI5 opens a thin file on him which states, refugee, communist past, possible security risk. But the war is desperate and science demands talent, so Fuchs is cleared. He joins Tube Alloys, Britain's top secret atomic research program. Inside the labs, he is precise, disciplined, almost machine-like. He calculates neutron diffusion rates with no errors, and solves complex equations from memory. Even works 14-hour days without complaining. To his colleagues, he's the ideal scientist. Quiet, polite, with no ego, just physics. But they're wrong. By 1941, Fuchs is no longer just a refugee mathematician. When the Americans later request Britain's best scientists for a new, larger project in New Mexico, Fuchs's name is pushed to the top of the list. What MI5 doesn't know is that sending Klaus Fuchs to Los Alamos will become one of the most catastrophic security decisions in Western history. September 23, 1941. A dim, rain-streaked office inside the Communist Party safe flat on King Street, London. Klaus Fuchs sits perfectly still, coat folded over his lap, glasses fogging from the cold. On the desk in front of him lies a single sheet of paper. A request to make contact with Soviet intelligence. But this isn't recruitment, this is a volunteer application. Fuchs has spent 2 years building equations for Britain's Maud Committee, the secret group studying whether an atomic bomb is even possible. Britain has almost no idea what they have in him, a German refugee with a mind like a cutting laser. They look at his quiet manner, his gentle smile, his polite nods, and they assume safety. They do not know he is about to breach their most sensitive scientific program from the inside. 2 weeks earlier, British scientists confirmed something extraordinary. A nuclear chain reaction is not only feasible, it can be weaponized. For most physicists, this discovery is thrilling. For Fuchs, it is terrifying. In his mind, one truth becomes absolute. If Britain and the United States build this weapon alone, the world will fracture into permanent nuclear imbalance. So on that September evening, Fuchs hands the note to a courier from the communist underground. On it, he writes that he seeks contact with a representative of the Soviet government. No hesitation, no bargaining, no request for money. He simply adds, this information must not belong to one power. By November 1941, the Soviets sent him a handler, a soft-spoken diplomat operating out of the Soviet embassy on Kensington Palace Gardens, codename Sontag. Fuchs arrives carrying a worn leather briefcase. Inside are handwritten summaries of Britain's earliest atomic calculations, diffusion rates, neutron cross-section data, and an assessment of potential uranium requirements. Sontag asks what payment he expects. Fuchs shakes his head. He wants nothing. Throughout 1942, while Britain moves its atomic program to the newly formed Tube Alloys project, Fuchs moves with it. He memorizes research, rewrites it in simplified form, then reconstructs it from memory in meetings with Soviet handlers. His calm, disciplined demeanor makes him invisible. He never boasts, never asks questions. His colleagues praise his meticulousness. His supervisors call him dependable. By 1943, Britain's program merges with America's Manhattan Project. Overnight, Fuchs becomes part of the largest and most expensive scientific operation in human history. And with every new clearance, his access multiplies. Soviet intelligence is, honestly, stunned. Their greatest penetration of Western nuclear research isn't a double agent, a bribe, or a blackmail victim. It is a volunteer. Fuchs passes diagrams, meeting minutes, theoretical arguments, even disagreements between British and American scientists. Information no spy service could collect any other way. He explains it so clearly that Soviet physicists later describe his reports as, well, better than textbooks. No one in Britain suspects anything, because no one looks at the quiet man in the back of the room. Yet with each passing month, the stakes rise. The Manhattan Project expands, security tightens, and the first whisper of plutonium bomb design begins circulating. Fuchs knows what that means. A single nation will soon control a weapon capable of rewriting geopolitics in a single afternoon. To him, sharing this knowledge is not betrayal, it is balance. But even Sontag, his Soviet contact, cannot predict what Fuchs will deliver next, or how deeply he will shape the future of global power. March 12, 1944, Los Alamos Laboratory, New Mexico. The most secret scientific site in the United States. Badge readers, roving MPs, barbed wire fencing, and a security doctrine designed to filter out every risk. Except the one walking through the front gate wearing a quiet smile and round glasses. Klaus Fuchs signs into the theoretical division at 8:03 a.m. His cover story is simple. A brilliant British scientist transferred to assist with calculations for the new implosion device. No one questions why his access is unusually broad. No one notices he carries no notebooks. Within weeks, he is sitting inside meetings discussing the most guarded concepts of the Manhattan Project. Explosive lens geometry, tamper shell thickness, neutron initiator mechanisms, and the timing circuitry that will compress plutonium to a supercritical state. These are not just secrets. They are the difference between an idea and a functioning atomic bomb. April 2nd, 1944. Soviet Residentura in New York receives an encrypted cable from a courier inside the United Kingdom. It contains a simple update. Our source has entered the American project. Moscow understands immediately. Their most valuable spy now has access to the core of the bomb program. Fuchs works under physicist Hans Bethe, running calculations on hydrodynamic shockwaves and critical mass thresholds. Every equation he solves for the Americans, he solves again in his mind, this time for the Soviets. By May, he begins packaging information into memory compartments. The 32-point detonation sequence, the dimensions of the plutonium pit, the composition of the explosive lenses, the timing tolerances required to achieve implosion symmetry within microseconds. He passes everything through clandestine dead drops in Santa Fe and whispered conversations with Soviet courier Harry Gold. They meet in crowded streets, never indoors, never twice in the same area. Gold carries nothing written. Fuchs never brings notes. The information moves entirely through their minds, yet it is more valuable than anything ever smuggled out of a military program. So, in the summer of 1944, Los Alamos is busy conducting high-explosive tests at Site Y. Fuchs attends all the briefings. When scientists start debating whether Christie's gadget can actually achieve stable compression, he just listens, silently, storing every word. Later, he's able to reconstruct the entire meeting for gold, the diagrams, the disagreements, even the exact shape of the reflected shockwave. Meanwhile, over in Moscow, physicists reading his reports realize something extraordinary. They are no longer behind. They are, in fact, parallel. By December 1944, American security tightens considerably. Clearances are reviewed, offices are searched, and yet, Fuchs remains untouched. He has no suspicious finances, no unusual behavior, and really, no signs of ideology. Just quiet brilliance and impeccable work. But, well, his espionage actually accelerates. He provides the Soviets with the calculations behind the neutron initiator known as the Urchin, a component American engineers consider, honestly, beyond top secret. He describes the tamper materials being tested, uranium, tungsten, carbide, natural uranium alloys, and explains quite clearly how each affects yield efficiency. He even outlines early projections for the bomb's potential destructive radius. Every piece fits perfectly into Moscow's own design. Then, on July 16, 1945, the Trinity test takes place, the first atomic explosion in all of human history. Fuchs stands among the scientists, watching as the rising fireball illuminates the desert. It is, without a doubt, history's most closely held secret. But by August, the Soviets already have detailed accounts of the device's firing mechanism, unusual blast asymmetries, and the emergency failsafe systems used during assembly. American intelligence will, honestly, spend years trying to understand how the Soviet Union managed to build an atomic bomb so quickly. By the time Fuchs leaves Los Alamos in mid-1946, he's passed more than 500 pages worth of nuclear design data, all delivered verbally, reconstructed from memory with stunning precision. His reports allow Soviet scientists to bypass entire branches of research, shaving years off development and ensuring that America would never hold a monopoly on the atom. But you know, the most dangerous secret Fuchs shares isn't about blast yields or plutonium compression. It is, rather, a conversation. One that will push the Soviets toward a second, even more devastating weapon, the hydrogen bomb. January 3, 1950, London, England. MI5 headquarters, Leconfield House. A freezing wind cuts down Curzon Street as a quiet, bespectacled physicist arrives for what he believes is a routine security review. Klaus Fuchs walks through the front doors at 9:12 a.m., carrying no lawyer, no notes, and no indication he is moments from destroying an entire Soviet espionage network. 2 weeks earlier, British cryptanalysts at GCHQ decrypted fragments of Soviet wartime messages, Venona cables thought to be unbreakable. Among them, a codename REST. Cross-referenced with travel logs, scientific assignments, and American project rosters, MI5 analysts isolate a single match. Klaus Fuchs, Los Alamos physicist, theoretical division, implosion program. For British intelligence, this discovery is catastrophic. A spy inside the Manhattan Project means every secret America guarded under triple-tier classification may already be in Moscow. But MI5 chooses an unconventional strategy. No raids, no handcuffs, no confrontation, just a polite invitation to talk. Fuchs is escorted into interview room number 2. The walls are bare. A kettle whistles softly in the corner. Detective Inspector William Scarden takes a seat across from him. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't accuse. He slides a single sheet of paper across the table. A partially decrypted Soviet cable. Only a few lines. Most names blacked out. One fragment reads, "Theoretical physicist provides valuable data." Fuchs studies it for 6 seconds. He exhales. "Yes, that is me." Scarden blinks. He wasn't expecting it. Fuchs then begins talking. Not defensively, not with hesitation, but with the calm clarity of a man who had already rehearsed this moment. He explains when he volunteered, whom he met, what he delivered. He recounts every exchange with courier Harry Gold, every calculation memorized, every report reconstructed from memory after returning to his dormitory at Los Alamos. MI5 stenographers struggle to keep up. By noon, Fuchs has outlined the entire structure of Soviet atomic intelligence in the West. By evening, he has named contacts across 2 continents. So, on January 4, 1950, the Americans receive an encrypted cable from London, and it's marked as critical, Los Alamos compromise. The implications are, honestly, immediate and devastating. If Fuchs delivered accurate implosion data, and well he did, the Soviets might already be building a bomb that's identical in design to the US Mark III. The Pentagon kicks off emergency audits across 6 nuclear sites. Security agents start combing through old personnel files, searching for more leaks. Meanwhile, Fuchs keeps on confessing. He describes the theoretical calculations he passed along, stuff like shockwave propagation, neutron behavior during compression, lens synchronization tolerances. This is information so sensitive that American scientists weren't even allowed to talk about it outside restricted rooms at Los Alamos. MI5 suddenly realizes they aren't just interrogating a spy, they're listening to the blueprint of how the Soviets caught up. His confession expands outward. He identifies couriers in the United States. He confirms espionage routes through New Mexico, New York, and London. He inadvertently exposes the network that will eventually lead American investigators to Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. For Western intelligence, this is a turning point. The Cold War is no longer theoretical, it is active. February 2, 1950. Fuchs is formally charged under the Official Secrets Act. Even then, he expresses no anger, no fear. He tells investigators he acted from moral conviction, to prevent any one nation from wielding absolute power. MI5 officers note the contradiction. The man who armed America's greatest adversary is polite, soft-spoken, even, remorseful. His trial lasts 90 minutes. He receives 14 years, the maximum sentence allowed under British law. But the real impact is global. In Washington, the Joint Committee on Atomic Energy accelerates development of the hydrogen bomb, convinced the Soviets will soon match American capabilities. In Moscow, Fuchs's confession forces the KGB to dismantle entire spy networks and rebuild them under tighter discipline. In London, MI5 undergoes the largest internal review since World War II. Fuchs becomes something rare in intelligence history, a single man whose words alter the strategic trajectory of 3 world powers. August 28, 1950. New Venona decrypts confirm the worst. Soviet physicist Igor Kurchatov is using information identical to Fuchs's reports. The implosion design tested at Semipalatinsk bears striking similarity to the Fat Man device detonated over Nagasaki. Fuchs didn't just speed the Soviet program. He may have made their first bomb possible. For the next 9 years, British interrogators will study Fuchs's statements line by line, using his network maps to dismantle sleeper cells and plug vulnerabilities across military and scientific institutions. He never retracts a single detail. Klaus Fuchs enters prison as a traitor, but his interrogation becomes something larger, the hinge upon which the early Cold War swings. By confessing, he exposes the world to a new reality. There are no secure laboratories, no perfect secrets, no walls high enough to keep out ideology. And by the time the West understands the full scale of his damage, the Soviet Union is no longer racing to catch up. It is already standing beside them,